In this lecture, we survey the role and record of international law and organization in the conduct of international relations. The central goal is to assess the extent that those institutions constrain state sovereignty, reduce anarchy, and provide order in world politics. Abba Eban was an Israeli diplomat and politician who served as Israel's deputy prime minister and later as Minister of Foreign Affairs. At the time of this quote, 1957, he was Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. His point was that while every nation has the duty to conduct relations in accordance with international law, it is often observed in the breach. Countries that obey international law are punished, while those that don't are allowed to break the law with impunity. As far as I know, the principle that international law is superior to the sovereignty of states is not accepted by any country. Liberals believe that it's possible to establish a system of international law and attain order and cooperation in world politics. Realists are skeptical because there's no system in place that would compel countries to obey any proposed system of international law. Dutch jurist and legal thinker Hugo Grotius was a leading theorist and writer on the modern system of international law. He developed the Grotian notion of the ocean to make the case that all countries have the right to sail the open seas and that powerful nations should not be allowed to deny that right. This was a step in the direction of the larger system of international law. Grotius accepted the concept of state sovereignty, but argued that states must be part of an international society with rules to determine how they should treat each other. His idea was the forerunner of the UN General Assembly. However, the General Assembly is limited to encouraging rather than legislating by Article 13 of the UN Charter. Treaties are the most important source of international laws. They work only if signatories live up to and respect the documents they sign. Treaty reservations are the riders that are attached to treaties and provide signers with the means to amend or modify specific provisions. While international custom is not binding, it is used as a way to justify national behavior and policy. For example, it was customary that the cannon shot rule established the state's territorial waters. In the age of sail, this was approximately 3 miles, hence the 3-mile rule. As technology advanced, this was challenged, and the 1994 Law of the Seas Treaty extended territorial waters out to 12 miles and economic zones at 200 miles. Gap fillers are the common sense legal principles that can be applied when a treaty does not address an issue. For example, if an individual's rights are violated but the violation is not covered by the 1966 Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, it can still be addressed if the violation is addressed by the domestic law of most civilized states. The international legal system consists of institutions that address specific issues and adjudicate some cases. It consists of the International Criminal Court, the World Trade Organization, and the International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice, or World Court, was established after World War II. It has 15 judges, all from different countries, each representing the court rather than the interest of their home country. The World Court has 2 primary functions. The first function is to issue non-binding advisory opinions on matter of international law at the request of the UN. Countries and individuals cannot request an opinion from the World Court. The second function is to hear and decide contentious cases between nation-states. Here again, individuals cannot go to the World Court, only countries. The decision in these cases is binding. Having said that, the World Court has no means to enforce its rulings. It relies on the parties involved to voluntarily honor the rulings of the court. The World Court's dependence on voluntary acquiescence is a weakness. In 1979, the United States petitioned the World Court to compel Iran to release Americans who had been taken hostage when the Iranians seized the United States Embassy. When the court ruled in 1980 that the Iranians had seized the hostages illegally, Iran ignored the ruling and continued to hold them. The hostages would not be released until just minutes after President Ronald Reagan was inaugurated on January 20th, 1981. In 1984, the communist government of Nicaragua went to the World Court and accused the United States of engaging in illegal military activities to destabilize the Nicaraguan regime. The United States refused to recognize the World Court's jurisdiction in this case. One of the criticisms of the international legal system is the weakness of law enforcement. This does not mean that no one obeys international law. Countries obey international law because they don't want to hurt their reputation and credibility. They also respect international law because they do not want to have another country take reprisals against them. Economic sanctions are a good example of one type of reprisal. Sometimes a powerful country like the United States can take on the role of sheriff to enforce international law. That country must have the economic and military power to take action, a commitment to the rules, and the will to act when necessary. America's action to expel Iraq from Kuwait in 1991 is an example of this principle in action. The questions asked: does hegemonic power support or undermine the evolution of effective international legal order? Hegemony means that one country has the power to force its will on other countries. In the past, the United States was able to influence other countries to behave according to international law because they feared the consequences. In the last 7 years, our influence has eroded, and today there are more instances of countries defying international law. The decline of American influence has not seen the increase of international cooperation to ensure order. Quite the contrary. Until the United States reasserts its leadership role, I think things will only get worse at the cost of international legal order. The difference between intergovernmental organizations, IGOs, and non-governmental organizations, NGOs, is that IGOs are strictly between states and NGOs are individuals. Another difference is that IGOs serve the interest of their state or country, while NGOs serve the cause of their organizations, such as human rights, global health, and the environment. The United Nations is a global, general-purpose, intergovernmental organization. The Organization of African States is an example of a regional intergovernmental agency. And OPEC, the oil cartel, is an example of a functional IGO. This is the structure of the United Nations. In terms of real impact, the most important part of the United Nations is the Security Council. This shows how the United Nations functions and how it is organized. Earlier, we noted that the World Court does not have the means to enforce its rulings beyond voluntary acquiescence. However, Chapter 14, Article 94 addresses the enforcement of World Court decisions. It says that if any party fails to perform obligations incumbent upon it under a judgment rendered by the court, the other party can take the case up with the Security Council, which can take measures to give effect to the judgment. In practice, this has never been used. The United Nations has the authority under Article 7 to respond to such acts of aggression as the invasion of South Korea in 1950 and the invasion of Kuwait in 1990. Use of this authority has been stymied by the use of the veto, first by the Soviet Union until 1991, and later by the decision of Russia to pursue an independent course and pursue its own interest. The one time the UN did vote to intervene and take action in Korea after the 1950 invasion was only possible because the Soviet Union was boycotting meetings of the UN Security Council. In 1990, the Security Council approved Resolution 687, which authorized all necessary force to remove Iraq from Kuwait. That was the high watermark for the UN Security Council. Since then, Russia and China have blocked any use of the UN to deal with aggression. UN peacekeeping has a mixed record, remembered principally for the failure to stop the genocide in Rwanda in 1994, and the failure by Dutch peacekeepers in the Bosnian town of Srebrenica, where Serb forces rounded up and executed some 7,000 Bosniaks. The United Nations is not designed to accomplish the task of dealing with aggression and breaches of the peace. The Security Council, which has the authority to use force, is hamstrung by the veto, and the General Assembly, which only requires a majority vote, does not have the authority to use force. The United States made an effort to address this with its United for Peace resolution, which allows the General Assembly to take action if the Security Council will not. While the resolution passed, it has only been used for peacekeeping operations because the General Assembly is unwilling to challenge the authority of the Security Council. The United Nations has done some good things, but it's failed to live up to its charter or its expectations. The same can be said for the international legal system. Liberals believe that both these systems have been good because they've limited some bad behavior. Liberals want to make the UN and international legal system stronger. Realists don't trust the system. The question is, who will be in charge?